right. So, a lot has been made over Trump signing an executive order claiming that there are only two sexes, as if that's something you can legislate. You can't legislate biology. But, obviously Trump thinks you can. Which I mentioned before, intersex people exist. Even those who are anti-trans will acknowledge that intersex people exist. So how can you claim that are only two sexes? It's just madness. But apparently someone tried this in Montana. So Montana tried to mandate that there are only two sexes. A judge called that a legal fiction. I would add it's a biological fiction as well, but let's see what he has to say. Well, what the judge has to say. I shouldn't assume that the judge is a he. In a case that could indicate the legal limits of President Donald Trump's efforts to erase transgender and other groups of sexually diverse individuals from American society, a Montana judge has struck down a law recognizing only two sexes in the state, male and female. Right? Senate Bill 458 was passed in 2023. The judge called it a legal fiction. And like I said, I would call it a biological fiction as well. By declaring as a matter of law that a human being can only be exactly one of two sexes, SB 458 explicitly excludes two plaintiffs from the definition of human beings, causing immediate harm traceable to SB 458. Missoula County District Judge Leslie Halligan ruled. The plaintiffs in the case were a group of transgender and intersex residents, some born with genetic conditions producing sex traits found in both male and female individuals. Yes, those would be the intersex ones. That is literally the definition of intersex. The state argued that even if a strict definition of male and female didn't quite encompass everyone, the changes had no tangible effects on the residents. How do you figure that? I actually just read an article where a actress, Hunter Schafer, I believe is her name, just got her passport back and she's listed as male. Simply because she's trans. So, exactly how is that not a tangible effect? What the fuck would you call that? Anyway, that was not the case with at least one of the plaintiffs who was born with XY chromosomes, the judge wrote. I'm going to guess this is an XY female, but that's just a guess. An XY pattern would normally result in a person who is biologically male, but the plaintiff has female genitalia and identifies as a woman. Called it. She is a cis woman, but under the SB 458 law, she would be forced to identify as male on official documents, which is totally absurd. Number one, we're just assuming chromosomes, because unless you're going to force everyone to have their chromosomes tested to see where they fit, going by chromosomes is hella stupid, because it just so happens that there was some reason that this plaintiff had their chromosomes tested. I assume because there was some sort of cosmic weirdness going on with them. Like the article I said earlier about the man who found out he was intersex on a DNA swab to a genealogy website. And suddenly a light bulb went off and you figured out why he was lethargic all the time. And so they were able to properly get his energy up. I assume it was medication, but so, but unless you're doing something like that, or there's some sort of weirdness that makes your physician decide to test your chromosomes or your genetics to begin with, most people don't know. I mean, it can be assumed that I'm an XX because I'm very much a woman. I haven't encountered anything that would lead me to believe that my chromosomes are weird. I mean, I'm weird in a lot of ways, but I don't think my chromosomes are one of them. But it's still just an assumption. I really don't know. Unless I get tested, I have no idea if I'm truly XX. Like I said, I just assume because there's no reason not to. But that's still just an assumption. I cannot look and see unless I have my genetics tested. So that's the first thing. You can assume looking at someone that they're XX or XY, but there are so many trans people who pass. Again, how the hell can you look at them and say, okay, you're XY, you're XX, you're trans, unless they tell you that they're trans? And even then, you're still assuming chromosomes. Because unless they were genetically tested, you do not know. I mean, it's a safe assumption, don't get me wrong, but it's still an assumption. So, now with genitalia, that's a more, I wouldn't say it's a better indicator because, again, intersex people exist, but that improves the chances. I was born with a vagina. When I went through puberty, I developed breasts. I didn't develop anything male qualities like, don't even know what that would be. I suddenly sprouted a penis. I honestly have no idea how I would even know that. But I went through female puberty. So again, good indication that I was born with XX chromosomes and there's nothing about me that's intersex. But again, this is an assumption. There might be something in my body that we're not aware of. But again, I would think that it would affect me. So I would be aware, at least on some level, that something isn't right. Even if it hasn't been diagnosed. Like I said, I have no reason to think I'm intersex, but weirder things have happened. So again, it's a good indicator, but it's not end all be all. There are women, actually, I watched a season of Survivor where one of the women was born without a uterus. Okay, it's not because she's intersex, she was just one of the few women who were born without a uterus. All right, that tells us nothing. I mean, are we going to say she's not a woman suddenly because she doesn't have a uterus? Anyway, I veered off a little bit there. In essence, the legislature seeks to permit discrimination against a person whose sex does not align with their gender identity, believing it to be legally distinct from discrimination directed at a person on the basis of sex, the judge wrote. She called the law an effort to legalize discrimination and said the state was misrepresenting the plaintiff's equal protection claim by dismissing them as the rare few. Okay, let's pretend that it is rare, and my understanding is intersex is rare. trans people are rare. There aren't a lot when you go percentage-wise. But, okay, so what? The fact is they exist. So basically you're saying that we don't have to have a law that encompasses everybody. We can other people. Okay, you don't fall into these categories. Too bad, you're outside of the norm, so we don't have to give you the time of day. Very, very strange flex for legislators to do, to say that there are certain people that deserve protections more than others. That's just bizarre. Such interpretation would eviscerate the protections built into the Montana Constitution. It has never been the law in the state that a rare few, even if they are despised, should lack protection under the law. Exactly. Okay, they're rare. Wonderful. That doesn't mean that people should ignore them. It's like, oh, they're a rare exception, so we can, treat them like crap. No, that's not how this works. So, the overreach extended to the plaintiff's medical care as well, the judge said. When the legislature thrusts itself into this protected zone of individual privacy under the guise of protecting patients' health, but in reality does so because of prevailing political ideology and the unrelenting pressure from individuals and organizations promoting their own beliefs and values. The state is not only infringing on personal autonomy, it is as well intellectually and morally indefensible, Halligan wrote. Which basically is saying that you're not actually protecting people from, caring about people's health. You're not actually saying that you care about protecting health and protecting people from not being preyed on by physicians or whatever you think is happening. You're basically using that as a shield to actually harm them, because you're basically saying that because doctors could prey on minority and vulnerable people, that instead you should prey on vulnerable people. I mean, are there doctors who prey on vulnerable patients? Absolutely. But should we throw an entire industry under the bus because you find certain things icky? No, we should not. I mean, okay, you don't understand trans people needing cross-sex hormones, or that they need certain surgeries, or whatever, or they just want to socially transition. Great that you don't understand that. I don't understand all of it because I'm not trans, so I don't know what it's like to be trans. But I'm not going to tell other people that because I don't understand it, that that's not what's happening to them, that's, that they shouldn't be going through this. They know what makes them comfortable. They know what they want their bodies to look like. They know what's going through their heads. Why are we telling people what should be going through their heads? It's just bizarre. So, not to mention, and I've mentioned this many times before, when it comes to medical care, it should be between the physician and the patient. The only time the state should get involved is if the patient realizes that they're being taken advantage of, that the doctor that they're seeing that something is wrong, is off about what they're telling them. They get a second opinion, discover that what this previous doctor was doing was the wrong thing, then obviously get the state involved. Great. Bring a lawsuit. But if they're doing what's a standard practice of care, why are we getting involved in that? Anyway, Anna Tellerts, one of the plaintiffs in the case, called the decision a win for all Montanans. I don't only see this as a win for gender diverse or intersex Montanans, but for every person who calls Montana home, she told the Daily Montanan. The state cannot overstep its bounds and discriminate against you for arbitrary reasons as it sees fit, Tellers said. This fits the most basic philosophy of living in Montana. Mind your own business. Exactly. You don't you're not intersex? You aren't trans? Great. Don't tell someone who's intersex or trans how they should feel about their bodies or how they should identify, because you're not them. And they're literally hurting nobody. So why are we getting involved? I can understand it getting involved in a situation where someone is committing self-harm. But just assuming that they're harming themselves because you don't believe trans people or intersex people exist? No, that's just not it. So, yeah. And that, of course, relates to the piece of sewage known as Donald Trump, because he also lacks this understanding that, number one, not everything is about him, and you can't legislate your prejudices into reality. That's just not a thing, because these people are going to exist whether you want them to or not, because that's the way the world works. Trans people exist. It's not like, I don't know, maybe people truly believe that it's a choice, which I don't know why anybody would choose to do all of that to themselves. And if you talk to trans people, they will say the same thing, that why would we go through all of this if, we didn't have to. We're going through this because this is the way we are. We aren't going through this because we woke up one day and said, you know what? I think I want to transition. That's not how this works. They thought about it. They might not have gotten the care that they needed when they were kids, because, it's only recently that it's become more acceptable for people, as from a young age, to question their gender identity, to go to a gender clinic and see if they truly are trans or they're just different. Because let's face it, there are plenty of women out there who like to dress like boys, but they don't consider themselves trans, they just happen to like the look. There are plenty of boys who probably feel comfortable wearing skirts. It's not because they're trans, they just happen to like skirts. And let's face it, skirts were originally designed for men because, well, that area should probably be hanging loose. So, Scots have kilts. And it ain't the women who wear them, it's the men. And actually traditionally without underwear, but that's a different story. Because that area should be hanging, not getting all bunched together. But at some point it was decided to switch all that. Now, if people want to dress a certain way or act a certain way, why are we telling them that they can't do stuff? And if it truly is that they're trans, then they will probably not just socially transition, but medically transition, provided they have the funds to do so. Because that's another thing people who are anti-trans don't understand. Just because you haven't medically transitioned doesn't mean you are not trans. It just means that you haven't either gotten around to medically transitioning, you can't afford to medically transition, you are only socially transitioning because that's as far as you can get before you would lose your family and friends, because that's the extent they can handle things. There's all sorts of reasons why people don't medically transition. Or maybe they're like, I just feel like this, but not, I don't feel to the point where I look down and think, oh, I wish I had a penis, or I wish I didn't have breasts, or whatever it is. That is completely up to them. Every trans person is different. They don't all have to transition to the point where, like Caitlyn Jenner, the only reason she says that she had bottom surgery was because people kept bugging her about the fact that if she's trans, why hasn't she had bottom surgery? Or just kept asking her, have you had bottom surgery? Which, not a fan of Caitlyn Jenner, but for the love of God, why is it your business whether someone had bottom surgery? Unless you're in a relationship with them, and a potentially sexual one at that, it's none of your business. If she feels like she should have bottom surgery, fine, because we all know she can afford it. If she wants to have bottom surgery, fine. If she doesn't think it's necessary, then fine too. I mean, people also do that because they are convinced, and let's face it, this says more about the person saying it than the trans person, this idea that trans women are sexual predators. Are you seriously telling me that the only reason that are you seriously telling me that if you had the opportunity to go into a woman's room, that you would indiscriminately attack? Because that's what it sounds like when men say that trans women are just men who want to creep on women. You're basically telling on yourself. You're basically saying that if you had the guts, you would do just that. I mean, that's not the flex you think it is. You're not actually saying you value women and you want to protect women. You're actually saying that women are sexual creatures and that the only reason someone with a penis would go in there is to attack them. Completely ignoring the fact that, number one, not all men, if you want to call them men, not all men are into women. Most are, yes, but not all. Now, if you're a trans woman, which is what we're talking about, not creeper men, but trans women, most of them are straight because most people are straight. So, we're talking about women who like men. So, that goes back to the fact that not all people with a penis, if you want to call them men, are straight. So we went from, so you could even say that they're gay. If you want to say they're gay, fine. But the fact still remains they're not interested in women. So why would they be creeping women when that is the farthest thing from their mind? They're not interested in that. I just don't understand why people are insisting on that. It just makes zero sense to me. But most bigotry makes no sense to me either. So that is the end of that article. And I believe that is the end of this video. So with that, I will see you guys in the next one.